Hey, girl gang, it's Dr. Joy here, and you are watching Delivering Joy MDTV. Welcome to Well Woman Wednesday, where we have been talking about living our best lives in 2023. Today, y'all, we're going to talk about something that's really serious. Now, you might not see being able to get along with people and build strong relationships as a healthcare issue, but I can guarantee you that it is the source for many people's stress because we just can't get along with each other, y'all. So we need to talk about this today. And I have got just the guest for you. So make sure you keep watching. We're back. And I'm so excited to introduce Winter Wheeler. Winter is a colleague of mine and a friend who I met on LinkedIn, and she's an attorney in Atlanta who specializes in mediation. Mediation is the process by which people learn to see eye to eye and come to an agreement together. And so she has been talking, giving TED Talks and talking about this all over the country. And she's going to help us understand how we need to get along. She is the owner and founder of Winter Wheeler Mediation and Arbitration in Atlanta. And she's a podcast host and a content creator and just an all-around boss lady. So I'm excited to introduce Winter Wheeler to you. Hi, Winter.
Hi, Joy. Thank you so much. That was really kind.
You've always been such a mover and shaker. And I was very interested in what you've done with Winter Wheeler Arbitration. How did you get into the mediation side of the legal field?
Well, I did a lot of mediations representing my clients on the attorney side at mediation, and realized my favorite parts of my job at the time were my mediation days. And I really loved the look on my client's face when something resolved. And I kind of got a little high off of that. So I decided I wanted to be the mediator.
Wow. And so can you tell us a little bit about what mediators do? Because I don't think many people actually know unless they've been in a situation where they've had to hire a mediator.
You are exactly correct. Most people do not know what I mean if I tell them I'm a mediator. So basically what I do is I help people resolve legal disputes outside of court. Primarily. I can also go into businesses and work with employees who might be having conflict.
Wow. And so today, I really want to talk a little bit more about conflict, because one of the biggest sources of stress that I find from my patients is relationships. People having trouble with their professional relationships, people having trouble with their personal relationships. And a lot of times it's because we have trouble seeing things from the other person or the other entity's perspective. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that. When we want to think about how to see eye to eye on things, what's the first step that you generally take to when you're counseling folks, whether it's a couple getting divorced or a company trying to complete a merger?
Well, I try to ascertain whether or not they know themselves, actually. So that's trying to get a read on the emotional intelligence of the individual, whether they can acknowledge their own emotions. Can they name their emotions and feelings? It is very common that people cannot do that. And so if it's possible, that's really what you need to work on first. That was obviously a long-term goal, but in the context of a mediation, or if you're just meeting someone, just being aware of the fact that you have your own emotions and they have their own emotions toward whatever is going on can get you pretty far. Just that acknowledgement that people can see things differently, that there is not necessarily a right or wrong way to view something, and making sure everyone is open at least to hearing the other side. If people are so zoned off and walled off that they can't really hear, then we won't get too far.
I think you just opened up a huge can of worms when you talked about naming our feelings and emotions. And I was listening to an audiobook where the author was talking about how usually when you ask people to name their emotions, people can only come up with about 3 or 4 emotions, which happy, sad, mad, excited. I don't know. Yes. But there are so many, there's such a much broader scope of emotions that we can feel. And when we can't uncover those and really kind of figure out what's at the heart of why we feel strongly about what we do, what we tend to do is close the door, like kind of wall off, like you talked about. Like, I don't want to hear it. This is how I feel, or this is what I think. And I'm not open to anybody else's ideas or feelings about this. So when you run into folks who are like that, how do you kind of gently start to nudge them and talk about, okay, this is what we got to kind of consider here?
So I don't ask people directly to identify emotions. I ask them questions about what's going on with them. I will identify through conversation what I think they might be feeling, in order to help them process some of that emotion that they're going through that they can't put a name to. It's just like you said, do you remember those old school books that was like Mr. Happy and Ms. Happy? Do you remember those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us who grew up on those are kind of limited to the emotions that were in those books.
Yeah.
Yes, it was very black and white, and feelings are not like that. So, if someone is clearly upset, I'll say, I see that you're upset. I understand you're angry, but I need to get to why this is such a problem. And I'll say, based on what I'm seeing and hearing, you are having an outsized reaction to this problem, and we need to figure out why. Because there are simple solutions to what this problem is. We have to get there, and let them know that their reaction is what's hindering the progress. Because sometimes, for example, if let's say a business dispute, right? They're angry at each other. I'll use a real example. So I had a business dispute that seemed really simple on paper, but in reality, when they were sitting in front of me, it was very apparent that something else was going on. There was a much deeper issue underlying this argument. And it took a very long time, but ultimately I got to, these people had worked together for decades. And then not only that, their families were also involved in this business. And a lot of things had happened in the past that weren't related in any way to the argument that they were there to talk to me about. But certainly every experience we have is still in the back of your mind. You can't remove that. So if someone is having an outsized reaction, continue to dig deeper, ask more questions, and you're going to have to ask more pointed questions like, well, how long have you known them? What really is that relationship? Are you friends outside of work? Do you know their spouse? And see if you can't try to pull some more out of them, because exactly, people cannot tell you how they feel, but they can tell you what has happened to them, and you can help identify what those things are for them. So in that scenario that I was talking about, I said, I think that you are hurt. You have hurt feelings, and that you are upset because they did not acknowledge that. They never acknowledged what they did to you. Would it be helpful if they apologized? I can tell from my conversations with them, in the other room, that they are very sorry that this happened. If they could take it back, they would. And I know they're willing to apologize. Would that help you? And the answer was yes. Once we got through the apology, we made progress on the actual issue they were there to unravel with their business.
That's such a great example. And I think that happens a lot in our personal relationships and our relationships at work, where we feel a certain way, but we don't have the words. And then things start to spiral out of control, because now I might be hurt, I might be angry, exasperated, and I don't really know how to say that to the other person, allowing my actions to reflect my feelings. And then this person may be very confused about why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, but taking offense at the actions and the words that I'm doling out.
Right. Ultimately, I think a lot of what is at the root of problems is resentment. That can really help if you can understand or uncover whatever that resentment is. It gets you pretty far in an argument.
And I think that's true even for, in our personal relationships. We all have history. We all have some expectations that we may not be sharing verbally with people.
Right.
And people cannot read our minds, right? So, when you deal, especially with people who've known each other personally, say like a couple that's getting divorced or something like that, how do you approach those really deep-seated personal feelings and dig into that history? Because that history is sometimes
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, a lot. So I'm like, "Ooh, girl, I can't even imagine." But I get to see that a lot on my side of the field when I'm dealing with couples, and the resentment and the history that maybe hasn't been all that stellar, and
to be a fly on the wall in your office.
Yeah. And I really try hard, even though I don't have anywhere near your mediation skills, to try to get people to see each other, and see their point of view, and to be curious enough to ask, like, what's going on with you and why you feel this way? If I walk into a room where there's clearly a lot of tension, I'm really always interested in what happened here. How do we get to this place? And what can we do to help each other? So, those relationship things are crazy. So when you get involved in that, what does that look like? And I bet it would be pretty interesting to hear some of these people talk.
It starts with a lot of curiosity and making sure I'm actively listening. So, of course, these are things we need to be doing in every conversation we have with anyone we come in contact with. And I try to create a safe space where people know, and I will tell them directly, I am not going to interrupt you while you talk. Mm-hmm. I will not do it. And that is so important for our personal relationships, because we get into the mindset of, well, this is what happened. This is how I see it. And there's no other way to see it. I don't need to listen to what they have to say because they're wrong.
I have this t-shirt that says, I'm not arguing. I'm just explaining why I'm right.
Yes, I need that t-shirt, by the way. That's amazing.
And that's how we get pigeonholed, because we stop really thinking about or caring about what the other person sees as important.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to remember that people feel good about their relationship with you if they feel good about themselves when they are with you. We need to be quiet more of the time. If someone is upset, let them talk. A lot of the time, and I do this too with my husband. Sometimes if he's upset with me, I'll just be quiet and he will talk himself out of not being mad at me anymore.
Right.
Do it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is, sometimes being able to hold space and sit still in the silence while somebody vents and gets out what's going on, you can learn a lot from that.
If we're quiet and people just start talking and they will get onto their train of thought, right? Then a whole lot of it may not make sense to you. It may not. You may not understand why they're talking about that certain thing, but at some point they will give you some nugget of information that's going to help click for you. Absolutely. And this happens all the time. Every single mediation I have, I will tell people, I am never going to interrupt you. I need to know what you're thinking, what you've been going through, how you're feeling. Let's just get started talking. And sometimes it can be, okay, well, I'm sensing that you're tense or you're nervous or you're whatever there's some negative energy happening. And I'll just say, why don't we just start by trying to break the ice here, trying to get things started. Tell me what you did over the weekend. Tell me what you did yesterday. And inevitably, they will end up at why they're upset. So I had a mediation not too long ago. This has actually happened twice. This has happened 2 times, where someone was very angry from the get-go and it made no sense. The outsized reaction I was talking about earlier, that's what I was seeing. So tried to bring it down, try to be friendly, try to be polite and kind and engaging. They'll start talking, right? So with both of these men, come to find out, they had recently gotten divorced. One of them had gotten his final decree in the mail the day before our mediation. So he was mad.
Yeah,
he was
big
not mad about anything that we were there to talk about, which is why he didn't share that information with his lawyer in advance and why he didn't tell me about it. But ultimately, we got there. And we would never have gotten there if I was trying to cut him off and get him to focus on the facts. It's never about the facts. It's about the emotions. It's like when I have an argument with my husband over how to stack the dishwasher. We're likely not arguing over how to stack the dishwasher. Typically, and I'll be real open at this point, if I'm arguing with him about something like that, it's because he's been telling me how to do something and I'm tired of him telling me how to do something, right? Mm-hmm. That's what it is. Yep. It's not the dishes.
It's the underlying. Dishes. Right. It's the underlying cause. And so sometimes we're having these symptoms in our relationship because we haven't gotten to the heart of the matter and we haven't gotten to the underlying cause with our personal relationships, with significant others or our girlfriends or our family members. We haven't gotten to the underlying cause and we haven't really been self-reflective enough to figure out what area of my boundaries are being violated here. Like, why is it that I feel like I want to just go ham and cuss everybody out? Like, what is it that they have done that violates my boundaries in some way? And so why am I so emotionally attached to this thing? And I'm willing to go 10 rounds with you about how to stack the dishwasher.
I think one thing that screws up people in our general generation is that we were all taught not to continue to bring up the past. The past is predictive of the future, right? So I'm going to bring up the fact that I'm upset about the dishes right now because that's what's happening right now. But if you've been correcting me on things I don't need to be corrected about, or you're telling me how to do things and I don't want to be told that history is still there, whether I say it or not. So,
and it might not even be your history with that particular individual. It might be history that from when you were growing up and you had people always bossing you around and you kind of made this vow to yourself that no one's going to tell me what to do.
Are you reading my mind? Because for me, that's exactly what happened. I have a whole lot of negative memories from being a kid surrounding cleaning the kitchen and the dishes. My mother was a complete nut about the dishes. So when he starts talking to me about how the dishes are done, I jump backward. Now, I have done a whole lot of work on myself, so I know that now.
Right.
When people don't have that, you have to give them the space and the grace to allow them to get there themselves. So I would not recommend in your personal relationships with people to start pretending to psychoanalyze them. Like, did your mama do this to you or something? No, let them get there on their own and ask, why are you so upset about this? Because, and this is important, don't just leave it on them to answer you because they cannot, right? If they could answer, they wouldn't be arguing with you about something so seemingly petty, right? Let them get there on their own. So say something more along the lines of, I don't understand why you're upset because I am trying to accomplish X. And I think if we do it this way, then we accomplish X more effectively, whatever. And then they can say to you, well, I'm not really concerned with how effective this is. I really want to do it this way because why? And there you have your answer, right? Mm-hmm. You have to continue to ask the questions. If someone is upset, they definitely will not identify their feelings properly for you. So even if you have someone who's going to say, I'm angry right now. Okay, there's nothing I can do with that unless you tell me why and how I can resolve it. Right? So, and two people have to be involved in an argument. You can't really argue by yourself. So step back, allow them to talk, actively listen, wait, be ready to pivot based on whatever they say. Like, we know how we often will sit around and like wait for our turn to talk.
I know for me personally, I catch myself thinking about what I'm about to say when you finish talking instead of actively listening to you. So I encourage everybody to try that tip that you just said, actively listen, and then figure out how you're going to pivot, because you have no idea what they're going to say. And if you're planning your response, you're not actively listening to that individual and trying to understand where they're coming from.
Right. And part of understanding where people are coming from is being determined to not judge them. And so if we are judging people, we are putting them on the defensive automatically. And there's no need for that. If people feel as though you are judging them, and typically that's because you're talking too much. If you don't say anything, like I keep repeating, just stop talking and listen. If you aren't saying anything, there's no reason for anyone to believe that you're judging them, right?
Right.
So stop.
Well, unless you're looking at them like,
well, sometimes my face does talk for me, but
yes. But I mean, that is
I have mastered the neutral face.
Right. The neutral face is so important. I mean, oftentimes when I'm sitting here and talking to someone who's upset about something, that listening to them talk, I can usually figure it out. Like, for instance, an example is a patient who comes in and is very angry. Before I even start to talk to them, I usually will ask very open-ended questions and listen to them talk. And it sometimes will take them all around the world to get back to what really is they're upset about. Mm-hmm. And it might just be that it's taken them this long to get a diagnosis or to understand what's happening. Or it's taken them this long to get someone to sit down and actively listen to them. So there's usually an underlying cause whenever somebody is acting way out of proportion to the situation. There's usually some history, something there, something that's happened, something that's been said or done. And they're like, I'm over this and I have my defenses up and I'm coming in swinging.
Yeah. And I think a tip for folks who can identify those things in themselves, like, you at the very least probably know if you are giving off funky vibes, right? You are in a bad mood, you got bad energy, you're getting on your own nerves. If you are in that space, be open about that. Whenever I know I'm in a bad mood, I will lead with that. I am not in a good mood. Now, I've been in therapy long enough where I can tell you exactly why and hope that I can talk myself down. But in the event that I can't do that, I will let the person that I'm talking to know, this is not about you. This is not about you. This is reflective of me, and I can't calm myself down. I can't get outside of the negative experiences that I have to now have a new experience with you.
That is right there. Yeah, to be able to say that, and then maybe you take a time out and say, let's circle back tomorrow or in a few hours so that we can still have a conversation. We can leave here friends or still married. So
it's true. We all have bad days.
Right.
We all know that. So every person you meet is not going to be on their best day. So if I'm meeting you and my energy is off, I know it. I will acknowledge it and I will say it. And, even at work, I have bad days. So, by the time I get to work, I have had gotten 4 children ready. I have dealt with my husband. I have tried to get myself ready in the car, most likely, while I was driving, all the things. all the things. Then I have to interact with staff and get all kinds of stuff ready. So if I'm frustrated and flustered when we sit down, I say so out loud. You're like, I am so sorry. I'm a little flustered right now. I'm gonna be okay. But I have had quite the morning. Get it out there. And then they know it's not about them. It's about you. And your emotions are always about you. Now, you can certainly be in an abusive situation. And at that point, that's different. You need to just eliminate that relationship. But most of the time, you are upset because of something within yourself that you are not able to control.
I love that. And I also love how you said that our emotions are always about us. And I say this all the time, and I truly believe that no one can make you feel any kind of way. Mm-hmm. You are reacting and responding based on your own unique set of experiences. And so there is that space in between somebody saying or doing something and you responding to that and choosing how you're going to respond emotionally and how your behavior towards that person is going to be. And so we have to kind of step back and check ourselves and say, okay, am I just feeling sensitive today about this particular area? And this person just kind of gut punched me there. And now I'm ready to fight, when really it's a thing where I could just step back and say, okay, today is not the day for this. And I might need to take a time out, figure out exactly why I'm so upset, what's being violated, in terms of my values. I think that's critical and key, being able to own where you are at that moment. Like like you said, I'm flustered, I'm frustrated, I'm going to be okay. But, I just want to let you know that so that you can kind of handle me with grace, handle me with care right now, because I'm not in a good space to be able to, for you to, give me the verbal jabs, because I might not be able to handle those today.
Correct. And another way I like to look at things is if I'm, I'll give you another real world example. So I was working in a law firm and we had a lot of very young women working there, right? And I always go out of my way to talk to people and help them and listen to them. That's just the personality I have. So I got some feedback from my boss that one or two of the girls found me intimidating, and he suggested that I alter my behavior. And I said, am I intimidating or are they intimidated? Because I'm not doing anything that should make anybody feel negatively about themselves. They feel negatively because they feel negatively. Mm-hmm. Right? And so when you come across someone who kind of rubs you the wrong way, or you're frustrated with somebody, you're like, are they frustrating or am I frustrated?
Yeah.
What are they doing? What about that person irks me? Because that's you. It's not them, typically. And it can be very simple things too. So my husband is very tall, and I hear this from him a lot, that people are very intimidated by him. This is the least intimidating man on the planet. Okay. He's big. So it's like, he's just tall. And I know that I have a girlfriend who is also very tall and gorgeous and just striking, right? And people are afraid to speak to her. Well, that's not something she's done to you. She exists.
Exactly.
How you feel about it is about you. So to label someone as intimidating, aggressive, overbearing, you got to stop and take stock in, why do I feel that way? Perhaps if someone is aggressive, in my opinion, I'm too mild-mannered. I'm not willing to state my own opinion the way that this other person is. Am I intimidated because I'm jealous that I can't do what they're doing? We have to stop projecting, start reflecting.
Oh, I love that. Stop
put that on a t-shirt.
Stop projecting and start reflecting. That self-reflection is so important. And I love that. Like, am I frustrated or is this person frustrating? Because I'm going to be honest, completely open. There are some people that just irritate me sometimes. And it has nothing to do with them. They're just existing. They're just doing themselves, but it might be their voice or something, and I have to remind myself, hey, this is not that person's fault. You need to get over yourself and be able to meet that person where they are and do whatever it is that you're trying to do. If that's a community project, or if that's at work or at home, whatever. We have to be able to think about that and take that step back and be self-reflective to say, you know what? This is not about that person. This is about me being in my feelings or being irritated today. I need to let that go. And that goes a long way in helping us to avoid damaging important relationships. I see people all the time that are so stressed out about, my significant other or my family or my friends. I thought they were my friends. And a lot of times we fail to see past our own feelings to be able to meet people and connect with the person in front of us where they are. And I feel like that often destroys us. So let's talk about this one before we go, because this is a big one when it comes to women supporting each other and being in relationship with each other. I think we kind of start to fall apart when one person might do or say something that offends us, and we don't know how to verbalize that we were offended. But instead, we start acting a little shady, having an attitude, being avoidant. How do we combat that sort of thing?
I think first and foremost, like I said, you got to know yourself. If someone has said something that is offensive to you, and it is, let's say it's subjectively offensive. So it's not you being sensitive. This is something that's subjectively offensive. Why is it that you didn't tell them when it happened, right? You got to think about that. What about you didn't want to discuss it? Are you afraid of damaging the relationship? But if you're afraid of damaging the relationship to your own detriment, to your own uncomfortability, why are you doing that? A healthy relationship would allow you to say, hold up, I don't like what you just said, and this is why. Right? So there's always another reason that's ultimately about you.
Absolutely. And this is about emotional maturity.
Right.
Being able to say to somebody, hey, I'm trying to understand why you just said or did that. I found it offensive, for these reasons.
Right.
And I want to feel good when I see you. I want to be able to talk to you about these things so that we can move forward in our relationship, because I value our relationship. Like being able to have an honest conversation with people. I find that so many times we're, for lack of a better word, fake about who we are and how we feel.
1000%. And it's not like I haven't done this before, and I still do this. If someone upsets me and I don't want to confront them about it, I will respond with, well, Winter, why? Why don't you want to just have that conversation? For me, ultimately, it means the relationship's not that important. I just don't care that much. And then I do get very, very fake with them.
Oh, wow. I've definitely been too.
Yeah.
Like I'll just try to start to ease on out the door, because I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to take this. And this is not somebody, but I want to be better about that. Like I'm working very much to get to a place where I can be open, because sometimes our relationships are not necessarily about us. Sometimes our relationships are about us actually offering the other person something, maybe showing them some grace, helping them to see a different perspective, pouring into their life. Sometimes it's not all about us. I think that the tips that you share have been so important. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we are so grateful to you, Winter, for sharing these golden tips. We want to go out here and build and maintain strong relationships in every aspect of our life. So that's part of our best life for 2023. All right, girl gang, we'll catch you next time. Peace.